Go for it.
Okay, I'd like to call the Planning Commission from the town of McCandless to order. First item on the agenda is review and recommendation of the lot line revision application for the Rosenall Geyer Geisler lot line revision. 9636 and 9640 Old Comer Road.
I have sent I think the applicant's either surveyor or engineer, a microphone request. Looks like he's online. I don't have much background for this one. This is pretty straightforward. It looks like there was a very tiny parcel in between these two lots that I believe one of the applicants is looking to give or sell over to the other. As of this morning, there were a couple little cleanup items on the originally submitted plan per the engineer's first comment letter. They've since reviewed it and everything is in compliance. So at this point, we're just on the Allegheny County 45-day window before council can vote on it. But for our purposes tonight, all of the engineering and subdivision regulations are compliant. So I think Mr. Robert Bednar is here representing the applicant.
Yes. My name is, good evening. My name is Bob Bednar, and I'm a registered surveyor for T3 Global Strategies, who performed the survey of the Rosenall property and the Gear property. The purpose of the subdivision was to satisfy some grading that infringed from the Rosenall property onto the Gear property. So what you will see is the parcel A that's on the plan is approximately 0.044 acres. And Daniel Gear, who's the owner of 946K 389 Lawton Block, is going to convey that parcel to Justin Rosenall.
Is that the long and short of it?
That's. I wish I
noticed
could
that
tell
there-
you more.
I noticed that there's no dimension on that that little sliver at the top.
Better.
Are you?
Yeah, on the plan there isn't, but on the blow up there is. I can add that before recording.
Okay. Is this accessed off of Old Comer Road? These houses.
Yes, they are.
So it fronts on Old Comer, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Any comments by the Planning Commission members?
No.
No.
Greg?
No.
John, no.
No, I'm good.
Lamar? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Dan, you have anything to say?
No, straightforward.
Okay.
Sorry.
Which
All right,
Dan?
well, I'd like then to entertain a motion to recommend to town council the lot line revision. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second. I'll
Okay.
second it.
All right. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's everybody.
Okay. All right.
Well, if they all go that quickly, huh?
Right, wouldn't that be great? We'd be here for 5 minutes. Mr.
That'd be
Bednar,
awesome.
I will keep an eye out for the county to give us a response or get out of the 45-day window. Presumably that will be by the second council meeting, which is the fourth Monday of this month. So we will give you a heads up if you make it onto the agenda for that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is review and recommendation of the conditional use application submitted by Steel City Billboards proposing an advertising sign use on a property located at the intersection of Vestal Park Lane and Perry Highway. Is there someone here to speak about that?
Yes, we've got Mr. Mitchell Folks and Mr. Dwight Ferguson. I believe Brian Altmeter, if I said that right. Hope I remembered. Okay. I sent him a mic and camera request as well. Dwight, I know that you sent me a list of people to put on camera. I think, oh, other than James Folks, I think maybe I've gotten all of them, but let me
Yeah.
know if I missed someone.
Just Chris,
Chris, oh, okay,
Adams.
okay. Gotcha.
right,
Chris, and you said it was Adams, right?
right. Okay,
All right.
would you like me to go?
Yes, go ahead.
We'll keep things rolling. Okay, so members of the Planning Commission, when we last met, there were 3 items. I'll just generally summarize that you asked us to provide new submissions on. The first was to revise the submission to raise the elevation of the sign by 2 feet so that the minimum height of the sign, including the skirt, would be 8 feet from ground level, and to provide some details showing that change. The second was related to the photometrics. We needed to provide you with revised photometrics because the sign is now 8 feet from the ground instead of 6 feet. And you asked that we provide you a photometric diagram, which is superimposed over the sign, so you can see how the otherwise abstract chart of photometrics relates to the structure itself. And then third, there was discussion about the adjacent signage. One is the Vestal Park sign, which we will show you. We're just proposing that the existing sign be removed, and we will show you an example of a replacement sign that Pittsburgh Outdoor will provide. And then we'll also show you how the do not enter sign, which is of PennDOT, will relate to those 2 signs. So RJ, shall we start with, let's start with the documents that I sent pertaining to the raising of the elevation of the sign.
Sure. Okay, give me 1 second here. Let
All
me
right.
pull them up. Okay, so you said you wanted the one regarding the measurement of the sign, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
And Mr. Folks can address this.
Hoping I picked the right one.
Well, you can't pick the wrong one. Well, it doesn't matter what order we go in. Okay. Mitch, would you like to tell us what this is intended to show? I'll just, let me just tell you quickly that, so we had some discussions about the relationship of the top of the ramp to the sign and the spatial relationships here. So we made this so it could be visually demonstrated. Mitch, you want to tell us about what we have here?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So what we have in front of us is, we'll start from the left, go to the right. On the left-hand side, you'll see a measurement of 28 feet. That just shows the representation height of the billboard structure. The next unit measurement is 8 feet. So that shows the bottom of the sign. The next measurement is 12 feet. So it's 12 feet from that do not enter sign. The next measurement is 4 feet. We measured how wide that do not enter sign is, and it was 4 feet wide and 14 feet tall. The next unit of measurement on the far right is 30 feet, and we took a measurement there, and that's the top of the barrier at 30 feet. So coming down the ramp on 19 there, it's 2 feet below that barrier. So that's what this illustration represents with those measurements.
Any questions about this illustration before we move on to the next? We can come back to it. Okay. Would you like to show us the next one, RJ? Either one of those is fine.
Okay. Now this is the one that I just pulled up. Did it switch on the PDF, or do you still see the same one?
It switched.
Okay, good. Just checking. Sometimes the Adobe Reader gets a little finicky with the screen share.
Okay.
Does this one work?
Yes, except that, yeah, that's it. If we minimize it, okay. This is only intended to represent the proposed replacement Vestal Field sign. that landscaping is not representative of the actual landscaping that is required that we put in there. It's just there to be representative of landscaping, but this is the sign. And maybe, RJ, if you could perhaps just zoom in on the Vestal Field sign so it can be read by the members of the Planning Commission a little better. There we go. Okay. Thoughts or comments about this sign? Mitch, I'm frankly just noticing now that this is actually on it's a separate structure, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Right now, as the park sign sits, there's a couple older wooden posts there. So we'd like to replace that and move that from its current position to the center of the pole of the billboard. So it covers that up and it makes everything a little bit much more neater. I think everything would look much better. And this is basically a representation of what we plan to build as far as the sign goes. We would probably, would want to have some discussion with the athletic association, and welcome any other parties that would like to make recommendations as far as what the Vestal Field Park sign should look like. But this is just something that we made of a rendering, but we can certainly look at other ideas for sure.
Okay, and what is the material composition of the current sign, and what is the proposed material composition of this replacement sign?
Okay, so right now, everything is made out of wood. It's plywood for the backing. The size of the sign is 4x8. So we propose to keep it the same exact size. As far as the face of the park sign, we'd like to make it a dye bond. And what a dye bond is basically just a metal sheet that's basically can last like for a very, very long time, much longer than some plywood and some paint. So we'd like to make something look very nice there and make sure that it lasts a decent amount of time.
Okay, and the support posts, what were you proposing there?
We could either do wood or metal. It really doesn't matter, whatever looks good and whatever, we really are open to that, so.
Okay, and
So-
go ahead, if anybody else had questions, please.
Oh, this is Lamar. I wanted to know, the existing Vestal Field sign is like set back almost into the brush and the growth there. What this looks like it's going to be in line and brought forward a bit. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it'd be brought forward just slightly.
Okay.
Like you said, it does sit back a little bit, so we'd kind of move it to the right and a little bit forward there. But there's plenty of space to add landscaping with our buffer yard and the sign and the billboard as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the setback or buffer yard and everything else. So, okay, that's cool. As long as it's within those parameters, I think you're good. And what's the width of the sign again? Let me see.
The width of the park sign or the billboard?
The billboard, because they look to be
Oh, yeah.
the billboard's a little bit bigger than the park sign, but
Right. Yeah. The billboard's 10 feet and the park sign's going to be 8. Mhm.
okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on?
I had one quick question.
Please.
I assume that this is like most billboards in that it can change from time to time.
No.
No, you're gonna have Brandy Verotti on there forever or what?
Oh, yeah, you can change the copy, yes. But it's not like an LED sign that would be changing.
Oh, no.
Yes.
When you change the copy, will you be changing the dimensions of the sign?
No, we would just simply be changing out the vinyl material itself with a new advertiser.
Now, how tall is this sign? How
The
tall?
overall height is 28 feet, but the face of the advertising structure itself is 18.
Okay. So the sign will stay at 10 feet by 18 feet in the future?
That's correct. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
And all the copy that gets put on that sign is going to fill the entirety of the sign, correct?
Oh, yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah, what we use to put that in there is we have what they call pockets on the vinyl itself, and there'll be like these sleeves that are behind the vinyl, and we have little cuts, and we use ratchet straps and attach it to the billboard itself. So they're all the same with every size that we would change out there. So.
Okay.
except that what is not shown on this image, Mitch, is the black area below the sign face there is what we've been referring to as a skirt. And that would probably say Steel City Billboards on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's just a small logo sign that'll probably be only 24 inches wide. It's just like a metal sheeting sign, that's all, with our name.
I just had one comment if the planning commission members are all done. Did anyone else have anything to add before I jumped in?
I did have a question. The landscaping there is not the landscaping you're going to use. And I've looked through my papers and I don't see the landscaping plan in here.
I think we're going to show you a landscaping plan. We are going to show you a landscaping plan tonight.
Okay.
We have one in our prior submission.
Yeah.
However, there's a little change in it because some of these trees behind the sign may not be viable. So we're going to replace them. So for that purpose, we will show you a revised landscaping plan, but it won't have whatever those are, tulips and marigolds. I was making fun of that before. That wouldn't last for 10 minutes, but it'll have a substantial landscaping plan.
Thank you.
So the one comment that I was going to add was, first of all, really cute sign. Big fan of the design. You know, we'll see what the final thing would shake out to be, but I like it so far. Now I understand that this is kind of a flat rendering, so of course everything might look a little different when it's in real life in 3D. I will say though, when I initially opened this file, when I got it from you guys, I didn't notice the posts on the side at first. And so I was kind of under the impression that they were all on the same pole mount, which just my personal feelings about it are, I would want to make sure that the Vestal Field sign is separate enough from the billboard that it doesn't appear that the billboard is anything that's, town owned in an endorsement. Because
sure.
the town does own Vestal Park. So, not to be persnickety or anything about it, because like I said, awesome sign. We'd be happy to have it, but that's just a thought that I had.
It also, if I may, it can't be like so close to the sign. It's either I was thinking the reason why we raised the sign up was so that the kids wouldn't be able to get to it. If the sign is attached to it, that wouldn't work. But also, if those posts were close enough where they could just kind of climb the pole and jump to it, it kind of defeats the purpose too. So there's, I don't know how far away it is, but keep that in mind with the design, that the goal is not to have, the young kids being able to get up there and potentially fall.
Right.
Fortunately, the former sign had a good long life. Hopefully this one will too. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, that we can always come back to it. Maybe we'll just move to the next one.
Yeah, could you just let me know which file name, if you have that available?
ED-9950R1.
Sure. Okay. And
okay, that's structural information.
did I pick the wrong one? It was ED-995. Okay, good.
This is correct. So this is just a replacement of the structural details of the sign, the difference being the elevation of the bottom of the sign from the ground level is increased by 2 feet. Okay, any questions on this? If not, RJ, we can go to the section about, let's see, I think it's one called Information Pertaining to the New Vestal Park Identification Sign. That's not something we've already looked at.
Okay, let me,
Okay,
1 second here. Let me double check for that.
I actually think that's what you just showed us.
Oh.
Maybe.
Okay. Do you want me to pull that back up?
Don't think so. I think we just looked at it. Let me just see if there's anything else in there that's a bit different. No, I think that's what we just looked at. So let's go to the photometric file, please.
Okay. So I've got a bunch of different files in this one.
Right. And so if we could look at overlay 1A, I think this contains almost all of the information that we need to discuss.
Okay.
And I think we can rely upon Chris here. So this has the kind of the raw photometric study with a drawn image of the billboard behind. And then as we scroll down, we can enlarge that as needed, but that will show the actual photometric study overlaying on the billboard. So if we could start with the boring part, which is the top image of the photometric study. Chris, could you remind us of what the lighting standard is, measured at what point?
Yeah, typically on a billboard application, you know, the light that passes over the billboard face, you don't want it to be, you know, no more than a foot candle. You'll notice on this one, after 10 feet to the left and right, the foot candles actually drop to those levels. So as far as light spillage, there's not going to be a lot. Majority of this light is going to be focused directly on the face of the board, which you'll see. You can see the foot candles is around 23, 18 in the center of the face.
Is the light fixture able to be focused on this billboard?
Correct.
I mean, can you adjust the size, the top, that sort of thing to make most of the light hit the billboard?
Yeah, well, this is a Cree LED light fixture, which already has sign optic LEDs, which is designed to focus majority of all of its light directly to the face of the board. So it's already set at a predetermined angle of 22 degrees toward the face, so that no light is spilling toward the front and out.
How far does this light stick out from the billboard?
On this one, you'll see it's showing that it's set out at 7 feet away from the face and 2 feet down.
The next document we will show you will be the engineering details of the light fixture. And so this is just to illustrate the pattern of the light in operation. So I believe the ordinance requires that the light is measured 3 feet from the ground elevation. And so on this diagram shows us, actually the one above, shows us that at 3 feet, the light is 0. I'm using my mouse as if you could see my mouse, but.
Tell me what you want me to circle.
So each of the horizontal, no, you're fine. At each of the horizontal lines, those are 2-foot increments. And so you can see that there's no light until you get above 6 feet. They're just zeros.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So it would be right around here is where you're talking about. And I believe that earlier today I want to say I added to the digital meeting packet, but I believe I heard from our folks at Gateway that the lighting plan as most recently submitted is compliant with the ordinance. Dan, if you have anything to add there.
No, that's correct. The measurement is 3 foot above, and as Dwight mentioned, we're at 0 at 3 feet above. So it complies.
Doesn't that 3 feet though assume that the light is shooting down from some pole or something rather than shooting up?
I think Mr. Meinert is absolutely correct. I think that standard was designed for the usual function of lights, which is to illuminate the ground and the area around the ground. It really isn't, it probably isn't designed for lights shining upward. But maybe that's because light shining upward, don't present the same issues of spillage.
But
The only
that's-
area that I
that's
would
a
be concerned
particular
with at all is the people that are on that bridge going across there. Is that, are the sides of the bridge high enough so that it will block the light? If you're in a car.
Chris, can you address that for us? Going back to maybe if we go up to the data.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Chris, can you explain to us if you were coming across that ramp?
Yeah, if you're looking at the chart, there's a light sky blue outline. Yes, that one there.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all that you would actually see coming off of the billboard. Everything else wouldn't be. It would be more just like ambient light.
I guess what I'm saying is that we're not going to be, if somebody's on that bridge, they're not going to be able to see the light fixture itself and see the light bulb inside that light fixture, are they?
No.
Okay.
And that
I imagine at best they would see the back of the billboard, correct?
probably
It depends
not.
on your angle. But I was just thinking that if the sides of that bridge are high enough, it'll block any of the light from a car window.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well.
So that sky blue light looks like it's at about 27 to 28 feet, and the top of the bridge is at 30 feet. And then you'd have people, if it was a car as opposed to a monster truck, they'd be sitting, I don't know what their eye level would be in relationship to that side, but it wouldn't be up.
Well, I was thinking that the side, are there sides to this bridge? I mean, that come up above the road?
I think that the second page has the street view.
I assume that this area up above there are the sides of that. If it's high enough, then you wouldn't see anything. I mean, you'll see a glow, but you wouldn't,
Right.
as long as you
Maybe.
don't see the actual
Yeah.
lumen, what do they call it? The fixture,
Correct.
you should be okay.
Would this be soft to just put the light on the top and let it shine down?
Well, I think that at the last meeting, we went back and forth with
Right.
the
And-
top, the bottom, where they
I
had to
know-
lift the sign.
Right, I know we did, but I'm just looking at this, and this is a great picture. This really explains it, I think, very well. And I don't want to jerk anyone around, but it seems like if the light is on the top, it not only shines down on the sign, but it also illuminates the Vestal Field sign, and then we don't have to worry about any of that ambient light on the road at all.
Well, it wouldn't comply with the ordinance if it illuminated the Vestal Field sign.
I mean,
Mm,
if it was on the top and shown down, that's against our ordinance?
Well, the light would have to stick out, 8 or 10 feet from the sign to hit the Vestal Park sign, since the Vestal Park sign is in front of
It's
the
forward of
billboard.
the, yeah.
And then we'd be deliberately designing it to light the ground.
All right, so forget the Vestal Field thing. Could we put a light on top to light up your thing and then not have to worry about traffic on the top, maybe getting confused with what is that light on that side?
Hey, Chris, can you give us a better idea about what is what these lines represent and the visibility of that light?
Yeah, I would think, well, if the light was put up at the top, it would be 2 foot above it. And at that point, because it's angled toward the face with traffic coming, I'm not sure which direction that is, but coming over the bridge, I would think they would see the actual LEDs of the fixture.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, I don't think that would work either.
okay.
I think that cutoff where they said basically beyond it is just sort of like an ambient glow. This, I believe, is the line that matches from the first page, right?
Yeah, I wasn't really concerned about the
And
ambient glow. I was just worried about whether
Yeah.
the cars could see the light fixture itself.
Well, even if they were coming down, wouldn't the sign itself like create a shadow for them?
It
I mean, they
might.
wouldn't see it until they passed it, and you'd have to be a passenger because you're on the right side, kind of looking down. And I think we have field lights that are probably going to end up being brighter than this thing.
Well, you're probably right. Maybe I overthought this a bit.
I think it'll be okay. I just don't. I was wondering about the trees. The trees are probably going to block everything too.
I'm thinking about coming from the other direction.
Going north?
Yes. That's the one I'm worried about.
Aren't we
Isn't that
looking
only a
north?
one-way ramp?
That's a one-way ramp, yeah.
Oh, is that the one-way ramp? Okay.
That's a one-way
That's
ramp.
traveling from left to right.
Thank you.
Now you mentioned that some of the trees weren't viable and would need to be replaced. These tall trees that were, counting on blocking the ambient light, is that the ones that you're talking about removing?
When we get to the landscaping plan, we can talk about those in detail. Let's move on to that, shall we? I'll try to help you find it there.
Yeah, whatever the file name is.
RJ, if you kept it the same as what we had it on as we named it, it's Steel City Billboard McCandless Buffer Yard Plan updated.
Okay, let's see here.
I'm not sure how it was.
But we have a revised one.
Do you have a revised one after that? Okay.
You know what? I'm sorry. We were going to look at that pre-installation specifications, which shows the actual details of the light fixture, perhaps, before we go to the landscaping plan.
I can do that for sure.
Okay.
And just for future reference, the buffer yard plan that I have pulled up right now would be from the 430 revision that I received. It may have been marked 421 or something like that. So, okay, so if that's the correct date, then I have that one ready to go to when we're at that point. Okay, so now I am pulling up the Cree light specifications. I'll zoom it in a little bit.
Okay, Chris, would you like to explain to us this fixture and how it's mounted and there we go. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the fixture itself is going to be mounted, of course, on that light pole. That's going to be about, what is that for? Typically, it's 5 to 6 feet out from the face of the sign, facing upward. That bottom diagram where it says light pole, 24-inch catwalk, the angle of that fixture is correct, but when you scroll up, it looks like a more steeper angle fixture. That's not representation of what it's really going to look like. It's too tall, but yeah, I don't know. Is this structure going to have a catwalk on the front side? I believe
Yes.
it's.
Yes.
Oh, sorry guys, dogs. So yeah, the light fixture, of course, hangs on the bottom of the catwalk and faces up toward the face. Pretty much how it's installed.
Is it? I'm assuming this is all weatherproof, heavy duty stuff. The snow is going to just melt off this thing, yeah?
Yep, it does. It actually generates enough heat to melt snow and ice when it's in operation.
Okay.
And I don't know this for certain, Chris, but isn't it correct that the wiring will be actually inside of the tubes of the sign structure?
Exactly. Yep. That bottom left-hand picture that shows the aluminum arm coming out, the wiring for the fixture is going to run through that to the back side and then through flexible conduit that's going to run to a junction box either on the back side or on the pole itself.
And what would be the elevation of the junction box?
That depends. That I don't know. It's whoever's the electrician that's going to be installing the wiring.
How bright is this light? How many lumens?
It puts out 14,000 lumens. A typical 400 watt metal halide fixture puts out around 29,000 lumens.
Okay. All right. Unless there are any other questions, now perhaps RJ, we can go to that revised landscaping plan. And maybe Brian can explain the reason why it's revised and what the differences are. There we go.
Okay. Thank you. When Mitchell went out and looked at the physical sign location near the do not enter sign, as well as the field sign, the location of the billboard was going to be closer to the existing spruce tree that's just behind the do not enter sign and one of the hawthorns. So they thought that that was going to be impacted by the construction of the foundation of the billboard. So those two trees would be removed as part of this work in order to compensate for that, as well as create a good foundation, planting foundation of the field sign and screen as much of the billboard behind. We decided that we would go with 9 cotoneaster type shrubs. They're about 3 to 4 foot high at mature height. They have a tendency to grow together as a hedge type foundation, green foundation for the field sign. We're going to create some symmetry by proposing 2 dwarf Alberta spruces on either side as accentuating the posts and trying to frame the sign. In addition, on the right-hand side where the spruce and the 1 hawthorn would be removed, we're going to keep the 2 red buds that we've proposed to help screen a little bit of the abutment and tie the billboard sign down a little bit. Those trees are written up well in the paper here recently with their purple flowers. And we feel that the sign and the size is right for that location. And we are still keeping a birch tree to the left that would sort of in-frame the billboard and soften a little bit going to the right or into the park or exiting the park as it is.
Would you be open to our EAC is putting together a, which has not been submitted to us yet, a list of native, deer-resistant, non-invasive plantings. I was looking up coneaster shrubs, and it says that they are very invasive and are spread by trees. Our park is suffering quite a bit now from invasive species.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be open to looking at this list if we can get it to you in a reasonable amount of time, and possibly substituting some of the trees that would be less invasive that could possibly do the same thing?
Sure. Yeah, no, there are certain of cotoneaster and common shrubs that everybody, you can still buy at the nursery, but they're considered invasive. So we'll gladly entertain reviewing your list.
Thank you. appreciate that consideration.
Can I get some clarity, please, in all the description of what you were planting? My question is pretty basic and simple, and I think it was asked earlier by Jonathan. And that is, those tall trees, whatever species they are, that basically block the view from the roadway, are they going to stay?
Yes, yes, they would stay. Those are along the slope of the ramp behind the sign. So those would stay, that were shown in the previous exhibit.
So as you're coming down that ramp, you would basically be seeing the trees as opposed to seeing the back of the sign. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's
correct.
correct. That's correct. But yeah, you won't even if the trees weren't there, you still wouldn't see it because it sits lower than the roadway.
And I remember that statistic, but it also seemingly would also help in any light spillage that might occur, even though the lumen schedule seems like it's not going to. The trees would be a further block of any light spillage for any traffic traveling on that ramp.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess something to maybe just a point to ponder. In the winter, those trees are going to be bare where it gets pitch black at 5:30. Would it be possible to get some dwarf evergreens near the top of that dirt slope that would be closer to the road that would catch any kind of light overflow for the, year round?
I think that property is right away for PennDOT. So that would be something that they would have to consider in doing, since I believe that's their property.
That's correct. The property is only about 50 feet in depth from the front part of the road in the picture going to the rear toward the park. So it's a relatively small piece of property that's owned.
We're happy to answer any other questions you may have. The only other thing which we don't need to display here is a letter of support from John Aubrey, who's the owner of the building, which is immediately adjacent across Vestal Park Lane from this site.
I can verify that that exists.
So that's what we had to supplement our presentation, and we'll be happy to wait for Ms. Zachary's plant suggestions, and then before we went before the commissioners, we would provide a supplement or a substituted plan and explain why we substituted those plans.
Thank you.
Were there any other items, RJ, that needed to be brought up as part of a motion?
No, at this point, it's just a recommendation on the conditional use app. So all of that, clear detail on some of the landscaping, that would come back around at the land development application stage as well.
Oh, okay.
I also wanted to just to let you know that we provided RJ with the text of an email response that we got from PennDOT as to whether or not they had any rules or applicable regulations for any light that might spill over onto the right of way, and they don't. We're aware of the regulations, and this is outside of those, and they don't have anything else. And it's a frequently asked question, apparently. And I submitted that to RJ.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
About that do not enter sign.
Who said that?
That was Brennan. What about the do not enter sign?
That stays, I think.
Yeah.
That's in
No,
the
I think at the
PennDOT
beginning of the
report.
presentation, there's going to be discussion about the interaction between the billboard and that do not enter sign.
Right. I think what we tried to do to address that is to simply make several visual representations of what the proposed signs would look like in relationship to that do not enter sign. So that you could form your own conclusions about the interaction of those signs.
Brandon, we could also have Public Works take a look at that and see where, what works best there. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think the presentation as a whole is fine, but when I looked at the images, maybe it's because of the coloring of the exemplar copy. It almost created a visual overload with the colors there. And I said, I don't know if I can distinguish between the billboard and that do not enter sign. Do not enter sign is probably more important in terms of paying attention to something and not being diverted.
You know what? Well, this is a conversation we had before coming to the planning commission meeting, but I think probably the most important thing would be to clearly post people exiting Vestal Park Lane that it's right out. I think if somebody was turning the wrong way, I think that sign isn't going to help them very much. Really what needs to happen is probably Vestal Park probably needs an arrow painted on it or some clear signage that says right out only. That's probably more important than that last minute sign.
If anything, you need to take that do not enter sign and put it right there in the median facing towards that drive. No left turn.
we can have Public Works look at that.
Mitch, I think when we were talking about this, you volunteered to paint the arrow on Vestal Park Lane.
Yeah, I mean, that's no big deal. We would gladly paint a right turn only on Vestal Park because that's really the only place that somebody would end up making a left. The only people making a left would be down at the light, and that billboard would clearly not be within visibility. So if they made the left-hand turn, they already made the left-hand turn because well before seeing that billboard when it comes into sight. So Vestal Park Lane, yeah, we could paint that a right arrow, right turn only, if necessary.
There's a driveway right there too, though, isn't there?
It's just Vestal Park. I believe. Well, yeah, that's right. Out of the dance studio, there is a small strip that they could turn out of that too. Yeah.
It's separated by a medial of some kind, though.
Yeah, there's a median there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not at that little strip mall.
It's
it's the length from what I can see on. Oh, unless you're meaning like from where the dance studio is, right past that on the same side.
There's a little drive just to the south.
Yeah, there's a guardrail separating them.
That's probably actually why there's a do not enter sign on that side, if I had to guess, was to prevent the people turning out of that little strip mall area from going down that way.
Yeah, there's a grassy separation, and then there's that guide rail that goes right to the PennDOT right of way.
Yeah, and also I think this is still Route 19, right? So the traffic signage may have been something that was approved by PennDOT.
RJ, are there any public comments on this?
I don't believe so. It looks like most of the people on the call are applicants, but just in case they aren't, if you wanted to provide public comment on this item, please type your name, address into the chat, and we will bring you on screen. Looks like so far nobody has added anything into the chat.
Okay. Well, then, are we at the motion stage?
I did have one other comment. I think it's just a little disconcerting that PennDOT doesn't really have any kind of clear guidelines as to the lighting allowance on the road, especially when, like 19. I know that our code establishes standards for lights, but those are normally off to the side where light isn't potentially facing oncoming traffic. I wonder if there's a way, and because it's all kind of, not clearly determinable how much light and how much effect that's going to have on traffic. If there is subject to some review by the township that can make a determination if the light is too bright, if it needs to be changed, or some kind of metrics, number of complaints from citizens, because the residents and the people traveling through our township, I mean, that's priority. So I just have that reservation without any kind of review.
On the right of way, it's 6 foot up, it's 0. And then above that, what is it, Chris? Just the I guess it's just some glare or something, or what does it go to?
Oh, with the fixture at being,
Yeah, that black line, that's,
yeah, I don't think it's gonna be at 8 foot high. There's, with oncoming traffic, there's no way to.
And if there's no adverse impact, then that's fine. But I think that there needs to have the township should have a lever that they can pull if that's not the case. If it is a nuisance to traffic and it poses a safety concern.
Well, I'll chime in. This is a conditional use, and the planning commission can make reasonable conditions a part of their motion. So if somebody wants to include a provision that the as-built lighting be monitored for compliance with the plan, and that it shall not cause glare or affect traffic in the area. I mean, that would be a reasonable condition that you could add to your recommendation for conditional use to the town council.
I believe there is also a stipulation in our signage section of the general zoning code that essentially says that you can't have a sign be lit in a way that would cause glare to drivers. So if we do find that, theoretically, if this moves forward and is approved, and there are problems, I have a vehicle in which I can send a zoning violation notice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because this is conditional use, maybe it's a little stronger, maybe a little more straightforward, and we're more upfront if we put some kind of conditional language in the approval. I would be more comfortable with that.
Do you want to propose the language, John, or should we go with what Dan just said?
I think with some similar to Dan, I don't have anything just off the cuff that would be better than what Dan had proposed.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion? Could I have a motion to recommend town council approve the conditional use application for an advertising sign use submitted by Steel City Billboards with the condition that Dan mentioned earlier about the lighting?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
RJ, do we have a commissioners meeting date yet?
Yes, the 24th is the public hearing date.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Pascal Place Garden Apartments at the intersection of Blazer Drive and McCandless Drive.
I am just wrangling all the different
Yeah,
Zoom boxes here.
take your time, RJ. I jumped right in there, but take your time.
No, that's okay. I've actually got Mr. Victor on the camera right now. And I believe I have the applicant as well. Yes.
And
Okay. Just as a brief introduction, this is what I've previously been referring to as the Blazer Drive Apartments. This is now officially coming forward, named as, I'm not sure if it's Paschal or Pascal. Maybe Steve, you can get the correct Pascal. All right, so Ted had it, I didn't. That's my first strikeout on pronunciation for the Zooms. So all right, so this development originally had come before the zoning hearing board. I believe that it was delayed by a couple months due to COVID from when originally they had applied for a variance. So they ended up coming back around in May and June. That was regarding a couple parking considerations because the intended end user of these garden apartments, about half of them will be non-traditional tenants that don't drive for the most part. So they came before the zoning hearing board for a request to have 1 parking spot per unit, which was approved, and 9 by 18, which again was approved because, you know, the expectation, I believe, is that most of the parking spots generally won't be used. That said, I'm going to let Mr. Victor and the Loisels explain sort of their thinking behind this project, sort of the where the idea originally came from, where they're hoping to go with it, all that good stuff.
Are you, have you opened this up for screen sharing?
Yes. Now you can do it.
We are unable to get video and not sure why.
Should we go ahead and?
Can you, I'm assuming you can't see us. We can't see us. Can you hear?
Yeah, I don't have the ability to turn your video on, unfortunately. I'm not sure if your camera is possibly disabled.
Oh, maybe I accidentally did that. Why don't we, can we go ahead and get on from the phone?
You can sign off and reconnect if it might help.
There's Steve
Okay.
Victor. How
Let me
you
do
doing,
that.
Steve?
I'm good, Ted. You want me to just proceed then, RJ?
If you're good with that, then I'm fine with that too.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Victor from Victor Wetzel Associates. And in a few minutes, Carol and Keith Lizelle will be re-entering into the mix here this evening. And what they are proposing to do is to construct a 20-unit, 3-story garden apartment unit. One that has been designed for adults who are challenged in some means that would limit them to their ability to drive vehicles. So they're more accustomed to taking public transportation or just walking. And so locating such a facility in a location that would allow for access to employment and also just a quality living environment is what we were looking to achieve on this plan. This is not an assisted living or independent living facility. It will be 8 or 28 individual garden apartment units. One of the units, though, will be resided by a caretaker. So we will have an in-house caretaker who will be more of a property manager than anything else. The site itself is located here along Blazer Drive, where Blazer Drive comes near McCandless Drive and then at the intersection of Ingomar Road. The property is outlined in red, and on the property, Pine Creek itself runs through the property, and adjacent to Pine Creek would be the floodway. That's the gray zone from here to here. And then above that would be, in the yellow colored zone, would be the flood plain area. And then above that would be non-flooded area at this particular location here. There also are wetlands on the property at this particular location. The zoning of the property does allow for garden apartment uses, and our proposal would be to construct primarily in this above floodplain area, but where we would fall into the floodplain area, then we would construct at an elevation above the FEMA flood elevation. The contour line right here is following the 988 contour. That's the FEMA designated 100-year flood line. The proposal would be to construct the parking lot along the frontage of Blazer Drive, followed by the garden apartment building itself here. You can see a portion of that building will fall into and encroach into the flood plain. As required by FEMA regulations, that is permitted as long as the building's first floor elevation is 1.5 feet higher than the flood elevation. And the flood elevation was 988, and we are building 2 feet above the FEMA elevation, with our first floor elevation being 990. The site plan calls for, again, the parking lot here in the front. There's, I think, 30 parking spaces has been approved by the zoning hearing board to have a reduction in the number of units based on the intended tenants within the plan. The main access is located here on the building, and then there are two entrances also to basically a U-shaped corridor through the plan. Once inside, there will be elevators to access all 3 levels. Off of the back of the building would be a shared plaza space that would be elevated again above the floodplain elevation. We believe that the extent of the existing vegetation, that's the olive colored area here, really complies with all of the and far exceeds the buffering requirements for the perimeter landscaping. In the parking lot area, we have the required street trees, planting, and a hedgerow to screen out the parking area itself. Sidewalks will be constructed along the full length of our frontage of Blazer Drive, from there to there. And that sidewalk will connect to the sidewalks that have been recently been installed with the development just to the west of us. We understand that and we have seen the review letter from Gateway Engineers. There are items that we will want to address, but we think they're pretty much cross the T and dot the I sort of things. And so we would like to take the opportunity to address those and then return to you next month for your formal consideration of the site plan. But we'd like to take this opportunity just to see if you have any questions or comments that we could be addressing with any responses to the engineer's review letter. Comments?
Ted, if you don't mind, I just want to open up with my main question to Steve and his team, which is McCandless has a provision within their stormwater management ordinance that you have to display that you're not displacing any of the floodplain. So in addition to raising the building up, which is what you have to do, and you explained that well, you have to prove that any encroachment into the floodplain, Steve, will not change the flood elevations on the property or cause any harm to any property upstream or downstream. Well, in this case, the downstream end is the culvert, so I don't believe you'll have any issue there. But the upstream end goes on to adjoining property. So has your engineer had a chance to look at that at all?
No, we have not.
Okay.
We understand that's an item we need to address, but we have not.
So that's a major, I mean, to me, that's a major issue. If you can't achieve that, then you have to get out of the way or create some additional floodplain or do something that's going to compensate for what the development is proposing.
Okay. Am I correct that, or incorrect in the statement that it can't raise the flood elevation by 1 foot? Or are you saying it's zero sum?
I mean, there's reasonable amounts within the data, but I believe it's like 1/10 of a foot, Steve. It's a couple inches.
Okay. For some reason in reviewing the county ordinances, I thought it said it had to do with 1 foot of elevation, but okay. We can take that on.
And since I'm on a roll here, the question I had, we sort of have 3 driveways. We have McCandless Drive, which is a McCandless street, and then we have the Sperling driveway, and then we're going to have this driveway, which is sort of in between those two. I realize what you're doing. I guess my question is there any ability to get back a little bit further from McCandless Drive? Right now I have that at about 100 feet, Steve, from center line to center line of intersection.
Yes, that's approximately correct.
So, I mean, I realize it's only a driveway, but it is for a multifamily building. I mean, most times we try to make that at least 150 feet just to give a little bit more room. And then there's queuing along, at that intersection to backing up. I'm not sure if it backs up that far. So that was just it's just another entry point onto Blazer, which is a busy road. And again, anything we can do to try to optimize the driveway points would be beneficial.
Dan, from your point of view, would it be better to actually line up the entrance into the Pasco Place with the McCandless Drive?
That's always the better way to do things. Sure.
I don't
know whether they can do it or not.
I would counter that's exactly opposite to what your comment a minute ago, Dan, that you're concerned that the traffic on Blazer is backing up from Ingomar, and now you want us to move down into that backup zone.
No, I think more my concern is the juxtaposed intersections, Steve. I mean, I'm not sure on how far that queues back up. That's something we could ask you to take a look at.
Sure.
It's not absolutely necessary that, I mean, you do have enough room that this is 2-lane traffic. It's 24 feet. You could in the front of the building, or is it one way through?
24 feet, Dan.
So you could on the eastern driveway, you could actually just terminate that with just a turnaround there if you wanted to.
Yeah. The other option, Dan, would be to take a couple of parking stalls right here.
Right.
Build the driveway right here, and then reposition those lost spaces back in this direction.
Right, I would agree.
Would that be acceptable?
That's another way to look at it. That would get you a little more distance away from McCandless Drive.
That would put us about midpoint between Spearlane and McCandless Drive also, by positioning it here.
Right.
Okay.
If I may also point out, you may recall that when RJ was sort of summarizing where we are to date, the reason why we asked for a reduction in the requirement for a specific number of parking spaces was because clearly the tenants will largely be non drivers. They won't have vehicles there. They won't be drivers. So just to maybe help with that, we'll certainly move it if we can, but just to maybe make you feel a little better about it, we would anticipate, not a whole lot of tenant initiated traffic in or out of the Pascal place. It's just not the nature of the tenants that we expect will be there.
Could you confirm again the number of units? Is it either 20 or 28? I've heard both numbers.
28.
And of the 28, how many are intended to be occupied by the folks who will probably not be driving? And how many will be occupied by people who might be driving?
27 who won't be drivers, 1 unit. The 28th one would be for the custodian.
Okay.
When you say there's no drivers, why do you say that?
The tenants for this have learning disabilities or other non-physical disabilities that keep them from acquiring driver's licenses.
No. Are there going to be any medical facilities in this building?
No, this is not a assisted living type facility. All of the residents for this building will be as healthy as you and I.
Will there be any vans or any other ways of people getting around?
I'm sure that there would be some car services, whether it be Uber or Lyft or other services that would be available to people. Yes.
But not by the owner of this property?
Not by the owner. No. All of
If I may add really quick, I believe that back when this was coming before the zoning hearing board, and maybe Keith and Carol, you can correct me if I misstate anything. There was anticipation for potentially up to half of the units to be occupied by sort of the more traditional tenant, to help offset expenses and things like that. So there was a stipulation put on the variance approval that if that balance changed at all, shifted more towards traditional tenants rather than, the individuals that just get a little bit of assistance, then there would be a zoning re-review of the parking. So this was sort of scoped out at that time, anticipating that there might be a mix. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Carol and Keith. Okay.
It's a little almost correct. It actually wasn't half. If you recall, I think the number was actually 7. So that if more than 7, or maybe it was 8, I can't recall specifically, that would trigger our requirement to conduct a traffic. So
Yeah. That sounds very familiar. Yeah.
There were more than 7 traditional tenants who occupied units in this building. We would, at your request, conduct a traffic study. So just to maybe put a little more clarity into the type of resident that we anticipate. These are largely independent adults with special needs. They have jobs, they have activities, socializing activities that they participate in. We will, I think, assist them, in getting from maybe one place to another with a van service, but they will be largely responsible for doing those things on their own. But this is not a, we don't want you to get the impression that this is any kind of a group home or a home where these tenants require, 100% care. They just need little nudges and an environment where they can be safe, socialize together, have access, as Stephen mentioned, to transportation, shopping, restaurants, what have you, just as you and I would find attractive. And that's really the goal of the building, is to try and provide a space for that group of adults that have been largely ignored across the state, across the country, for that matter. It's a need that is being met now, whose time has come, I think, and we're finding Carol and I, in doing our research and looking around, many more of these are coming available across the country. Nothing really all this in Western Pennsylvania yet. And we're thrilled to have the support, at least so far, of McCandless Township to be able to have a facility. This is not going to be, if you ran into this group of individuals for the most part in a restaurant or what have you, other than some maybe minor differences in capabilities, you wouldn't realize that you were in the midst of a special group of people.
And the house or property manager that would live in the one unit is essentially there to sort of provide a little bit of that extra executive functioning support. Is that accurate?
Well, yes, we as with any building, we anticipate there's going to be needs for the building itself, right? Something's going to break, something's going to need to be fixed, replaced, what have you. But in addition to that, we're hoping that they will be responsible for minor needs of the individuals. Again, we're not anticipating great needs from this group, but also to arrange for and help us coordinate, fun activities for these for the residents. Hockey games, a pizza party in the lobby. We've tried to develop the building to have a very accommodative common space so that they will have ample room to get together, to socialize, as would anyone, whether they are traditional tenants or non-traditional tenants. An exercise room, just ways to sort of participate more fully in the benefits of socialization.
I seem to remember that you folks, I think it was you folks who spoke when we were initially talking about the building next door, the large complex, which is already under construction. And at that time, you were just hoping for such a facility, as I recall. And if you're the same people, I commend you for having come this far to something as fully developed as this.
Well, thank you.
We're sticking to it.
Yeah, we're trying to stick to it.
we have a 33-year-old son, and thank you for that. We have a 33-year-old son that if you ask any adults parents of adults, independent adults with any special needs, they'll tell you that the biggest concern they have is what happens when we're gone or when we're no longer able to make sure that our children are taken care of appropriately. And that's really what drove us and what drives us today in the face of some significant headwinds to continue to move forward with the project. We're very committed to it, but thank you for recognizing that. And again, I'll say it again, we have found in McCandless, at least so far, the folks we've spoken with have just been outstanding in their support of this. And as I said earlier, it's a movement whose time has come, and we're very thankful for McCandless sort of recognizing that and removing some of those headwinds, if you will.
I do have a couple of comments. When we were discussing the property next door, McCandless Square or whatever it's called, I forget the name of it officially, but anyway, there was a walking path which we discussed placing between the building and Pine Creek. And that was part of an overall walking and trail plan that McCandless is trying to incorporate. And my comment to RJ when I first saw this was, can that path somehow continue behind your property to come on over toward Blazier Drive, closer to McCandless Drive? Right now, as I recall, that path converts from a path to the sidewalk because that's all it could do to bring itself back out to Blazier Drive. But if we do have a walking path, I would like it to continue, and I'm wondering and hoping that it could across your property rather than people having to convert to a cement walkway. Is that a possibility that we can at least look into?
There is a sanitary sewer easement that runs through the property, as I'm showing here. If we could find connectivity there, certainly it would be very easy to run a trail along that sewer easement.
I would love if we could look into that. I think as part of this trail program that we're trying to incorporate in McCandless, this would be a wonderful extension, because the idea was to get this trail all the way over to the North Park. And that just gets it one section further.
If RJ could provide us the location of the trail as it sits on the abutting property to the west, we'll look into that.
Happy to
Okay.
coordinate.
And the other comment I have, and I'm not a professional in this in any stretch, but you are developing and building, in my opinion, exceedingly close to the floodplain line, a foot or two, as I thought I heard you describe it. And I know that's the official 100-year FEMA floodplain line, and I think you quoted at 988 feet. My question is, and my concern is, in 2004, Hurricane Ivan dropped so much rain that this entire area was flooded. I don't know if this particular site was flooded. Certainly the cinemas were flooded and put out of business as a result. And I don't know whether the current 100-year FEMA floodplain line that you're referencing was exceeded by Hurricane Ivan in 2004. Do you know whether it was, or has the FEMA 100-year plain line taken into account the high water mark that Ivan deposited in this area?
I am not. I don't know if Dan Dizeroff has any insight. He may know the McCandless ordinance as to, has it been updated since Ivan?
Well, I can only say that the FEMA maps have been updated recently, Dan. So I think they're as accurate as they've been in a long time. But the reason why our floodplain ordinance specifies 18 inches above 100-year is it provides a factor of safety above that elevation. What I heard Steve say is he specified 2 feet above. So they're going to need to run a model on this anyway. There's a model out there, a Pine Creek model, that they can simulate the flooding that occurred. So we can take a look at that further to make sure that the 2 feet is enough and they're not doing anything to, the idea is that they're not doing anything to worsen conditions on any adjoining properties.
Good. I'm just concerned. You said that FEMA has updated their maps, and I hope to God that they have. If they haven't, and if they haven't taken into account the damage that Ivan did, I would hate to see something built that might get flooded. That doesn't do any of us any good. So hopefully that research will go into it.
We'll take a further look at it. That was one of our comments under the stormwater section.
And my last comment is purely aesthetic. I don't know exactly what this building is going to look like. There's an earlier picture of a rendering, and it looks quite nice. All I ask is that it somehow complement the development that is being built right next to it in some form or fashion. It looks like it probably does. And I don't know if that's in the pitch of the roof or the color of the roof or the color of the siding or the facing, whatever can be taken into account to make that look like a blended, not that they're part of the same complex, but that it should blend in. I think that would be beneficial to all of us.
We'll ask our architect for an opinion on that. We have the opportunity to go look at the existing building that's going up, and we'll get him to give us an opinion.
Thank you.
And by the way, that's a very good observation, and we have in fact had that conversation with developers next door, indicating that we would like to either mimic in some way the construction type to the extent that it's at least as good as what we want. And as you know, that's up and out of the ground now, and so we have something to actually look at to see but not only from the structure standpoint, but also from a landscape perspective to try and make it look like it belongs there. So thank you for that. And we have reached out to them, and they've been certainly willing to share with us the idea that their designs, their color schemes, their materials, we could certainly borrow from them to include some of those features in ours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment, but if you can get back to the site plan. There we go. Do you have any dumpsters on this property?
No. All of the garbage collection will occur inside the building
Okay,
and then be brought out on collection day.
good, good. What is this little space in the front here? Between
Here?
the two blue trees? It looks bare. Is that just,
What we wanted to do was just create a visual opening to the front of the building.
oh, okay,
We did not want the building, in addition to that, we have a fire hydrant that's sitting right here.
okay,
So we didn't want to obscure the fire hydrant. We thought, well, let's take that opportunity to sort of open this up so that when coming down the street, you will see the front of the building.
okay, so that'll just be grass or something like that?
Correct.
Okay. How far above the ground are these, this patio in the back? I'm just kind of curious.
Approximately 5 feet.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I was just wondering if there was any kind of environmental studies. I know that there have been some contamination concerns in that area, and there was a recommendation there for a requirement for a phase 2 environmental site assessment based on some soil contamination. And I don't know if that was done or in consideration of the construction, especially next to the so close to wetlands in Pine Creek.
We know of no history of environmental issues on this particular site. If you know of something specific, we'd appreciate knowing it, but as far as we know, there are none.
Yeah, I think the point of concern was where Trader Horn was. It used to be an oil company there, and there was some oil contamination on the soil. I just did a Google search when I was looking at this. I just Ingomar and Blazer, and it was like result number 2 from Google. But I can forward that to RJ.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, my understanding is that you're going to come back next month then.
Yes, sir.
So should we be tabling this, RJ?
Well, I don't believe that they're calling for a motion tonight. So if I put my lawyer hat on for a second, I'll say that we're okay to just leave the discussion open.
All right. Anybody, is there any comment from the public?
I do not have anyone signed up to comment on this issue.
Okay. I guess that's it then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve.
We'll see you next month.
See you next month.
All right.
Okay. Anybody need a break?
I can queue up Dawn if anyone needs to stretch their legs.
All right. Well, the next thing is a continued discussion of 8500 Thompson Run Road Garden Apartments.
I went ahead and sent him a mic and camera request.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I just said that I brought him on the camera.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is that Dawn Poole?
Dawn, you're
Yeah.
live. Okay. All right, so We, at this point, have been through the zoning hearing board, I think are the latest updates. They received a variance just to not have to exclude half of the portion of the property that was a steep slope from the density calculations. If anyone wants me to go into the brutal detail of the gross versus net lot area, I can do that again. I see that the eyes tend to glaze over when I do, but happy to do so if anyone has questions. But essentially, the result from that variance hearing was the zoning hearing board felt that the ordinance's intent was if you were creating steep slopes as part of your project, then you should not be able to count that land as increasing your density allowance for either townhomes or apartments, whatever multifamily use. However, the small amount of steep slopes on this property were created by the previous development. Essentially the applicant was not creating that hardship themselves. It ended up taking them from, I think, 46.2 allowed units between the two buildings to around 48, which brings them to 24 units per building, which is the maximum that we allow in the ordinance. So that was a pretty minor one. However, they are still being held to the 10 by 18 parking spot standard. They have also revised the application so that a previous variance to allow them to have the edge of the parking lot within about 5 to 8, depending on the exact spot, within 5 to 8 feet of the building. That was withdrawn because the plan has been revised so that the parking lot is at least 15 feet from the building as required by code. So I believe that's all the latest. Dawn, did you have anything else that you wanted to add at this stage?
No, we submitted most everything to Gateway a few weeks ago. I think we have a comment letter back. Is that correct, Dan? Most of the items that Gateway brought up in their comment letter were, I believe, just minor details.
Dawn, I hate to characterize something that way because I got plans this afternoon at 5 o'clock. A new set of plans. So I understood, and I had a call from your engineer that I understand the buildings are changing to deal with the parking.
Yes, yeah, we did extend the southern end of the building to allow for the 10-foot parking stalls inside the building.
Right. So from that perspective, there are some changes, and I didn't get a chance to look at what those impacts are. I would say from geotechnical standpoint, our geotechnical review, we feel that you're in good shape, but we've been going back and forth related to the traffic. We still don't have a traffic impact study to look at yet. So that's a major issue.
When you say a major issue, I understood it to be a mathematical issue, where Trant used a 1.7 denominator and it's supposed to use a 17%.
I think that update's still being reviewed by the traffic engineer.
Yeah, we don't have any. We're waiting for the latest document to come in terms of traffic. I sent the letter out without the traffic, just stating that we would review that independently. So again, as it relates to the site itself, we're down to some stormwater comments, but in terms of the offsite issues, Dawn, there was one other thing that was of concern, which is I believe that the storm sewer needs to be revised through the cemetery property.
I believe your comment was that the storm pipe had to go to the creek, not just discharge and past the berm of the road on Thompson, correct?
Yeah, we think it actually does go down there, but it's inaccurately shown on the survey. So again, there's some details and some things still up in the air. So I know we're getting close to the finish line, but again, I can't comment on traffic at all. Still some stormwater items to clean up. And we know that we have a change in the building footprint based upon a change, what I heard from the engineer this afternoon. So
But you have received those changes?
got him at 5 o'clock this afternoon.
It's already
Dan-
on. Okay.
Dan, if you've not had time to review those and you're not comfortable, I certainly would not be comfortable approving anything that I had just 2 hours before we.
Yeah, we're not asking you to approve anything. Yeah.
Okay.
We're just having a discussion.
Oh, okay. It's just hard. I just didn't want to put Dan on the spot, you know, if he didn't have a chance to
Thank you
review
for
it.
that. Thank you for that. I wouldn't let that happen.
Okay.
Okay, so in our discussion, so, now we have the 10-foot parking stalls. We have 96 of them. Is there any other, I know there's some stormwater issues and some, I call them minor, I know Dan doesn't. But is there anything from the planning commission, anything else that we should be looking at before we come in next month? We're obviously trying to push this project forward, and we've been here a number of months. So outside of engineering, is there anything design-wise that the planning commission still has issue with or would like to see?
I wasn't here last month, Don. Did you add the sidewalk along whatever that is, Thompson Run?
We could put sidewalk in as far as we can, but not the entire length of our property. I believe we showed that in detail, based on the grading that exists. We would need a retaining wall to put in a sidewalk, the entire length of our frontage, which we have, we don't mind putting in a sidewalk where it's feasible, but, the sidewalk going south on Thompson would never be extended, or could never be extended due to the topography.
I'll have to take a look at that. I haven't had a chance to look at that.
Dawn, were you going to put the sidewalk into the north of the driveway? Up to Mascary's property? Was that the proposal?
Yes. Yeah, there was some discussion about us putting it on my Mascari property as well. It's a landscaped property that we don't own.
RJ, what is the minimal distance that you can have from the very side line of a road to where a sidewalk starts? I know it's really close on Babcock. How close can that be?
I'm not sure that we have, I would have to check and see if we have an exact regulation. Sorry if you're all getting echo. I haven't been able to figure out the culprit yet. But yeah, I would have to check, but I don't believe we have an exact setback.
All these sidewalk I've ever installed in the town has been 2 foot back off the curb and 4 feet wide.
Well, and that's the reason I wanted to know how much we needed, because if we didn't have to have that 2 feet and just needed the 4 foot, then maybe that would change how far down that sidewalk could run. That's why I was asking.
I've commonly seen 3, either 2 or 3 for a tree line. And because this is a county road, I mean, we'd have to see what they would have to say, but they might be uncomfortable with that sidewalk abutting the pavement precisely.
Just for reference, when we developed a piece of property on 3 Degree Road a few years ago, which was a county road, and we wanted to put the sidewalk all the way out to the edge of the road, they wouldn't permit it.
Is that right? Okay.
That's correct. And I think just for safety purposes, it shouldn't be on the edge of the road. But, I mean, that's your call.
I didn't know what the rule was.
Well, if it goes to the edge of the road, you have to put a curb in. You have to put a curb, which is the barrier. You have to raise the sidewalk up.
We're talking about like those hand-formed concrete curbs, Kim.
I just thought if we put it a little bit closer, then we might be able to, it might fit in there.
Yeah, we can take it down as far as it's reasonable, but again, I don't ever see it being extended. It would be like the sidewalk to nowhere. I can see going north toward Mascari, you know, maybe someday they could put a sidewalk in to get to the intersection, but going south, there's just doesn't make practical sense. But we're willing to put it in if it works.
Is there anything else?
I have nothing else now. I just,
Any other comments from planning commission members?
No.
Okay, so what's our resolution here? Are we waiting till next month till these items that are outstanding are resolved?
Yeah, I would prefer to do that. I don't like to make people wait, but I don't have any information on the traffic. And it would give us a time just to kind of rest in on these final couple issues, make sure everything's buttoned up before we bring it back to the planning commission.
Okay. RJ, are we running into any time deadlines?
No, Don and I have already discussed a review extension, so they're good to go.
Okay, so we don't need to table this?
I mean, if you all prefer to make a motion, that's fine.
Either way, it doesn't make any difference, right?
Yeah, because he hasn't, like, nobody's called the vote at this time.
Okay.
before we go though, Ted, I would like to know, you know, what are the outstanding issues that the planning commission has with this development so that we come back fully prepared and we're not, hopefully not delayed next month. I know there's, you know, the traffic study, there's some stormwater issues, but, you know, more engineering. But what about planning?
Well, see what you can do about the sidewalk. I think you've taken care of most of the other items as far as I could tell. Do you have anything, RJ, that you want to chime in here on?
I think that all of the concerns have been pretty clearly identified for what remains anyway on the engineering letter. You know, I think ultimately the sidewalk issue is going to come down to they're requesting the modification and you all make a decision based, you know, on whether you want to recommend it or not. And of course, then it gets to the town council stage. I actually have a positive comment because why not? I'm nice every once in a while. So far I've seen a couple different residential plans, you know, that have come through here, and it's my understanding that most of them choose to pay the fee in lieu for the recreation area. I understand that that's probably partially because the code is designed as if, you know, they're almost making it like a little pocket park in the neighborhood or something. But, you know, we have heard a couple different, at a couple different meetings that they're looking to scope out, like, you know, some actual active recreation on the site. And, you know, like there's a bocce court on the latest iteration, a walking trail around the property, especially because this property is not particularly accessible, you know, even if there are sidewalks, it's not really like you have a neighborhood to stroll around or anything. So I'm just pleased that they seem to be going the route of wanting to actually add the rec area instead of the fee in lieu. So I'd like to see that remain.
Okay.
One more comment, our extended parking area underground is, the roof of it is going to now be patios for each apartment building as well. So it's more recreation space for the residents of those buildings.
Oh, that sounds good.
It'll look good too, Ted.
Good. Anybody else? Okay. I guess that's it then, Don.
All right, well, thanks for your time this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
All right.
Okay. The backyard chicken draft ordinance. There we go.
Back again. So I mentioned in the agenda email, but this is actually, oh, Kim.
That was given to me
Is
by
that,
a constituent.
is that a portrait of your chicken, Kim?
No, this was given to me by a constituent who was feeling our pain over how long this ordinance has taken us, so. It's our mascot painting.
So home stretch, I hope. Essentially the reason that this is coming back to the planning commission is because out of the whole public hearing and the McCandless and the engagement project back in the fall, it seemed that the 100-foot setback from, you know, all lot lines would be a real challenge for most of the, you know, residences in the community, but also we had quite a few responses, you know, from people that marked on the map that they would like chickens, and about half of them could do it with a lower setback, whereas the 100-foot setback cut out almost everyone. So if the policy goal here is essentially to, you know, open this up, see how it goes, and then of course, you know, keeping in mind that we can reevaluate, but this 50-foot setback in this new version is kind of what council's sort of compromise setback is looking like, at least in this current proposed draft. So if that's the policy goal, you know, a 100-foot setback isn't really serving it because nobody's going to apply for the most part anyway, right? So functionally, nothing has really changed except for that, but that's a material change in the zoning and in what properties could potentially have the opportunity to participate in this. So we had to send it back to the county, come back to you. I also mentioned in the agenda email that there are 2 ordinances in your packet because several of the regulations that were originally proposed for zoning, when we took a look with the new town attorney, we felt that they were more appropriate to be regulated under property maintenance. The simple version without the jargon to that is it just makes it easier for us to enforce which issue may be a problem. You know, more appropriate enforcement venues for each of the types of issues. So some things have been moved over to the property maintenance code, but these ordinances would presumably be considered as a duo at the council stage. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I have some comments. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have some comments I want to make. I think generally the keeping up chicken draft ordinance is pretty good. I do have a problem with the provisions dealing with hobby farms that are throughout the ordinance. The purpose of a hobby farm provision seems to be to provide a non-conforming use in instances where none would be available under the non-conforming use article 1343 of the zoning code. Let me explain. Currently, if you want chickens for personal use or enjoyment, which is the criteria of this code, you would have to go before town council in a conditional use hearing to get town council's approval. Then if you met the criteria, you would be granted approval unless there was something wrong, for example, something that affected the health, general welfare, or safety of the citizens. Well, I believe the hobby farm provision is in this ordinance is to provide the non-conforming use effect for those people who currently have chickens and did not get the needed approval from town council under section 1341.031 of the zoning code. I believe the purpose of the hobby farm in this draft, this draft is the keeping of chickens provisions, is to allow those people a free pass by eliminating certain provisions of keeping of chicken ordinance. That is the provisions dealing with accessory uses. That is section 1315.05C on page 2 of the draft ordinance. Now, if you take a look at the draft ordinance, you'll see what I'm talking about. Page 2. It has the for the first time it has the non-conforming or it has the hobby farm language there as it does through in other provisions. So to allow people a free pass by eliminating certain provisions of, and there's the provisions. There's 8 of them. One of which is no person shall keep a rooster. It allows people with the zoning of the hobby farms to if they get that hobby farm criteria, it allows them to avoid the rooster requirement. I'm afraid, however, by eliminating the hobby use provisions, we create a situation where people who didn't request the necessary conditional use approval are in much better position than those that work to get this law changed rather than going ahead and creating a Harvey Farm situation. For example, looking at page 2 of the ordinance in section 2, we see changes to accessory use which are required to be met in order to get chickens when this ordinance is in effect. In other words, these are the requirements that they will have to meet. For example, C5 of section 1315.05 provides no person shall keep a rooster. C6 provides the selling of chickens or chicken products, including eggs, is prohibited. This is what the future people see. C7, slaughtering and butchering of chickens on residential property is prohibited. None of these prohibitions seem to apply to hobby farms. Do we really want people who have a hobby farm to be engaged in such activities? And so that's by basic requirement, we're giving these people with hobby farms that are exempt from this section freedom from meeting these criteria.
So to be clear, the hobby farm term, which is used in this draft ordinance, would be referring essentially to the 134103 conditional use for farms and farm buildings. If anyone has chickens right now and they don't have a conditional use approval as a farm on an R1 or R2 lot, they're out of compliance. And if they don't get a permit and meet anything within this ordinance, they will receive a notice of violation from the zoning department.
Yeah,
So they're not grandfathered in then, is what you're saying, RJ?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it says a hobby farm is defined as a small farm. Well, what does that mean? How many acres is a small farm?
It says is a small farm that is not a primary source of income for the property owner and is maintained for pleasure and recreation. So I don't necessarily think that the exact size is material, but I believe in the conditional use section of our ordinance, you have to have at least 5 acres of property to even qualify.
It's 5 acres.
So why don't we say in there is defined as a small farm and it must have at least five minimum acres?
Because it already says that in the conditional use section. That's what that would be defined as.
Yeah. Well, it seems like we're avoiding the conditional use section by passing this.
Well, yes, that would be the intent from what I understand, is that council prefers to specifically allow chickens by permit under particular circumstances.
Well, I still feel it's giving these people a free ride to allow them to get around this the current provisions.
Yeah, I wasn't here when this was originally begun to be drafted, so grain of salt. But from what I understand, that's the intention, is that the council meant to define backyard chickens by permit accessory use as separate from a conditional use of a farm or farm building that requires 5 acres of land. So essentially, these are not considered, this isn't a primary use of the property. This is an accessory structure and use.
Yeah, and I can see that for people that are going to get chickens when this is passed, I can see that they'll be, if they meet the criteria, they'll be able to qualify. But a hobby farm, you eliminate all that requirement. You eliminate
well, then the requirements, if somebody is looking to be a true hobby farm use on a residential lot, then the conditional use criteria would apply.
As backup.
Sorry.
What was that, Lamar?
I was saying, it sounds like that would be as backup as the default.
Well, you can kind of think of it as these are sort of two separate functions of zoning. So when a conditional use application comes through, like for example, the billboard thing that we just did, that's for something that would be a primary use generally of the property. So like if somebody has a single family home parcel, you know, presumably most of us live in single family homes, that's the primary use of our property. Under what's on the books right now, there's like absolutely no vehicle to have chickens unless you are in R1 or R2, have 5 acres of property and meet all of these other conditional use standards and get that conditional use approval, just like the billboard thing is doing, except that like their property would essentially become considered a farm. Anyone who has farm animals right now but hasn't gone through that process, unless they were before the year 2000 or whenever this was originally established, and 2000, it looks like that was the date, they're not grandfathered in. Now the backyard chicken thing is done by something called accessory use and by permit and accessory structure. You can think of that as like a shed or a pool. Essentially what this ordinance would do is say this very specific way of having chickens is not something that falls under the farm conditional use. It's something that we treat more like a shed.
Yeah, no, I get that. And then the actual care of chickens piece, section 2D, is really the part that I was advocating for at the beginning of this thing, which is kind of like, okay, if it gets nasty, then you can't have them anymore. So, just to boil it down to layman's terms, the only part about this that I've always had a concern with was enforcement. And it looks like you get like your certificate revoked, and then you have what, like 2 years to, 2 months to remove the situation, right? That's what we're saying?
Yeah, so and that would be regulated through the property maintenance code instead, which essentially the difference for that is if it's a zoning notice of violation, if somebody appeals that, it goes to the zoning hearing board and then somebody can appeal that decision downtown. Whereas with the property maintenance code, you go straight to the magistrate and then appealing downtown. So essentially it's just court cases get treated differently depending on what type of violation notice you get. So that's why a lot of those care regulations were moved over into the property maintenance side.
Okay.
Look at page 2, section 2C1. C1 says chickens on any existing farm, or should that be existing hobby farm, or is it?
Well, it says existing farms or hobby farms.
Well, why wouldn't you put existing right before hobby? Existing farm or existing.
The 2 years that I spent as an English major would tell me that that is implied.
Okay, let's see. Chickens on any existing farm, or this is the keeping of chicken for personal use and enjoyment. Chickens on any existing farm or hobby farm are exempt from the standards in this section. Do you know of any hobby farms in McCandless?
I don't have a list of conditional use properties available to me right now. I would have to investigate further.
So,
is there a particular one you're concerned about?
No, I'm not concerned. I just wondered if you knew about any. So these are properties that would be exempt under the non-conforming use doctrine.
Not if they never received approval in the first place.
Well, if they never received approval in the first place, then this would grandfather the event. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that anyone that's keeping chickens right now that isn't officially designated as a conditional use farm or farm building is out of compliance, and this ordinance does not grandfather them in.
Well,
and you can't eat them.
Pardon me?
I said, and you can't eat them.
You can't slaughter them on residential property. You can take them somewhere else. And
You
do
can
it if
eat them.
insist.
Somebody else has to kill them, and
Oh man, that's the fun part. No,
that is. We don't want children traumatized.
exactly. And no roosters.
Really,
Right.
The only change in this that council put forth was this 50 foot, this from 100 foot to 50 foot, And also originally we had said it couldn't be within so many feet of a structure. And then we said, oh, wait, you could have that from your house, you know, so it could be closer to your house, your own house, not somebody
As your
else's.
primary residence, yeah.
Right. So those were the only two changes. RJ, am I right on that? That was really and then you split things up a little bit for enforcement. But
Yes, that's accurate.
Those are the only two things that are different from how it came through before. So if you're okay with the 100 feet to 50 feet, and that if people want to have chickens up against their own house, let them, you know, it's the neighbors that were, you know, the safety of the chickens.
Right.
And neighbors are what this ordinance is to protect. If you want
I
to
could
live with
ask
your chickens,
Well,
they
Dumb
can live.
question.
I'm glad that they came around to my way of thinking. If you recall, that was the almost the only thing that I talked about when we first did this, was that the 100 feet was too big because it requires an acre lot to have 100 feet in each direction. So if you have a 200 by 200 lot, it's 40,000 square feet, which is pretty close to an acre. And there's not that many lots in McCandless that are an acre. There are some, but not that many.
Yeah, it would essentially be limited to state lots at that point, which I don't think was necessarily the intent.
No, there's a lot of people that have chickens. They'll have half a dozen chickens, and nobody hardly even knows they're there.
That's the goal.
I don't think we're gonna get any, you know, chicken hatcheries anywhere in McCandless. It's unlikely anyway, let's put it that way.
Sidebar, are we gonna get around to the dog thing again?
I hope not.
Oh, that passed.
We're done. Dogs
Oh,
are done.
I must have missed that. Okay.
Yeah, we knocked that one back out around when we did this
There you
whole
go.
thing. We actually I was concerned that one or the other might become controversial, and so maybe they should be split into separate votes. And so here we are with the chickens, who were slightly controversial, and the dog ordinance, which passed.
Magnificent.
Is this intended to generally regulate all aspects of having a chicken?
Of chickenness.
Aspects of
Pepper
having
dinner.
a chicken under the condition of accessory use and structure.
I don't know the details of having a chicken, but like if someone wanted to have a flock of or one or more chickens like in their house,
Like a pet chicken?
right? I don't know enough about the topic to delineate pet versus get an egg versus feel good because there's a couple walking around the backyard. But if you so desired to have like a chicken in your house, that would not be regulated by what's on the table here, correct?
Well, so no, but so basically the way that we define farm animals, I do actually like the way that we do this because, you know, so one method would be list all of the animals that you think are regular household pets. That's what you're allowed to have. The other method, which we do and which I prefer, is list all of the animals that we don't consider household pets and classify them based on small, medium, large farm animal. And so I believe there's language editing one of the sections to essentially say, if you've got a backyard chicken permit and you're in compliance, then your chicken is allowed to exist, not as a farm animal. It doesn't say anything about whether it goes in or outside your house. Really, on the zoning end, what we're concerned about is your coop far enough away and screened the way it's supposed to be?
What if you don't have a coop?
You do not get a permit.
It has to be in a coop.
Well, can you still have a chicken?
No,
Like, why not? I'm not
because in
asking
that
you. I
case,
just
it would
don't
be
know if
treated
you
like
say,
a farm
look,
animal.
How about a small pig?
Oh,
What if it has?
you know what, Ted, we can talk about that another time.
I'm just,
The chicken has its own bedroom. I think maybe.
well, I'm just wondering if there's provisions in here with dealing with chicken waste and having enough outside area for it to walk around or whatever it needs to do, fencing, etc. Would that apply to a hypothetical situation where you don't keep a chicken in a coop, you keep it in your garage, but nonetheless the chicken goes out in your yard? all day and it just comes in at night. So you do the backyard chicken, but you just don't have the chicken coop in your backyard.
I think, let me pull up the nuisance side of this, because I believe there's some incorporation in there that basically says like the chicken needs to be in the coop at night. So ergo,
It's under care of chickens, section 2A.
you are on top of that, Lamar.
Yeah, because that part of, I'm like, okay, the chicken shall be secured within the coop during non-daylight hours. So
Yeah.
Plus, they're not allowed to just run around.
no, they have to be in a coop, chicken
there's
run,
no
or
running
fenced
around.
area at all
Right,
times.
but Brendan's basically asking, what if we pretend the coop is the house? To which I would say you can't.
I'm just partially, but also just, I guess, the top line header I see is like backyard chickens. And
Well, if you get down to 2D, like for me, I was kind of like swirling with all those questions too, but then I got down to D, which is really where I start everything, which is like, if you're keeping it in such a way that you don't get caught because you're not causing a problem, free country, right? But so no person shall keep or harbor chickens in the town in a manner that creates an offensive odor, excessive noise, or unsanitary condition which disturbs the neighboring residences or threatens public health. To me, 2D is like the Lamar clause. Like, as long as you're not bothering anybody, I don't care if you have a dragon in your house, honestly. Like, what? Just don't bother your neighbors and don't
Not
burn the
writing a
house.
dragon ordinance.
Yeah, please don't give me a dragon ordinance.
Only if they breathe fire.
Daenerys Targaryen. All right.
Oh, could you just add in C1, after the word small, containing a minimum of 5 acres? And close parentheses? Would there be any difficulty in doing that?
I mean, I guess in theory we could do it, but it wouldn't change the substance of the regulation.
Well, it would. I think it would. And if you could do that for, I think it's where small farms exist, 1305 C1, and also I think 1317 C1. And I believe wherever it is within this provision. How about doing that?
I will bring the comment to council for their review.
Okay.
Good.
We done? Do we agree with the moving from 100 feet to 50 feet? Do we need a motion to that effect?
Yes, a recommending motion would be good in this case.
Okay. Can we have a motion then to recommend the dimensional requirement of 50 feet rather than 100 feet? Anybody?
I'll move.
Is that John?
Brendan.
Who is that?
Brendan.
Brendan?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Wow, we made it through in
We're
a little
moving
over
right
2
along,
hours
aren't we?
with all that on the agenda. Yeah, we
How
did pretty
about
good.
approval of meeting minutes, excuse me, approval of meeting minutes. I wasn't here last month, so I haven't read them either. Do we have a motion to do that?
I'll motion to approve the
approve.
motion.
Ooh,
Approve the
Yeah,
minutes.
Dan.
it was in strong unison.
I'll move to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. General public comment, is there anything that we should do on that? Is there anybody left
Well,
watching us?
The only person Left in the audience is Ms. Woods. So if Ms. Woods has a public comment, she can make it, but otherwise I think we're all set.
Okay. Can we have a motion for adjournment then? Usually
Motion to
people are
adjourn.
quick to do that one. A second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Sounds good. And
All
Lamar.
right.
Lamar,
Yes, sir.